في أكبر الكتب.
Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lambcast. This is episode 786, and I'm your host, Richard Kirkham. This week, we're talking about the new film from acclaimed director Paul Thomas Anderson, One Battle After Another. Starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Benicio del Toro, Sean Penn, Teyana Taylor, and Chase Infinity, One Battle After Another follows the long-running confrontation between a revolutionary group and the obsessive sex-charged army captain that is pursuing them. Joining the show today are both a couple of revolutionary film critics. I don't know how sex-charged they are, but I know that they've got opinions and insights on the film, the story, and the filmmaker. First up is Rishabh Vashitha from his self-named review site. Rishabh, why is your shirt so tight?
That's a good question, Richard, but to answer that question, I'll have to respond with another question. You'll have to tell me, what time is it right now?
I was going to ask Howard what time it is, but that's okay, because time is not relevant in this vicinity, except that it is time for us to get started talking. Howard,
Right.
Welcome back to the show. Do you know what
Thank
time
you.
it is?
Time has no meaning anymore.
That's, you know
No,
what?
I don't know what time it is. I can't remember. I need to talk to your manager. There's got to be somebody ahead of you.
Are you calling it a Greyhawk 10?
Yes.
All right. Well, I am my own supervisor here, so I'll accept your call, and we'll go ahead and continue the conversation. As usual, we're going to start with our general thoughts about the film, and then we'll get more specific as we go along. We will finally finish our talk about the movie in a spoiler section that all of you listening will be warned about as we move forward. Rishabh, it's been a while since you've been on the show, so I'm going to let you start first. How did you feel generally about One Battle After Another?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. It's good to be back on the Lambcast, chatting with you guys. And yes, I was positive on this movie for sure. I think coming out of it, I came out basically feeling that it is one of the best movies I've seen this year, probably so far. Just because, I mean, to an extent, I will also say this year has, at least for me, not been the best for movie going, I would say. Not a lot of strong entries this year for me. But this is one I enjoyed. I think PTA as a director too is still somebody who has the technical skill to, bring a movie like this together. And I really did enjoy kind of the kind of old-fashionedness of this movie to an extent, in the sense that it kind of feels a little bit like a neo-Western, but it's also an action thriller. It's also an action comedy. It has a little bit of political relevance, but it's also very focused on its storytelling and to make it an entertaining and enjoyable feature film where there's a compelling script, there's good acting, good characters. I think a lot of the response to the movie has been very overwhelmingly positive. I don't know if I would go as far as saying this is like a masterpiece or like one of the greatest movies that we've seen in the last 5 years. I've seen some of that chatter and commentary as well. But I think given the fact that this film is almost like comes on clocking in at almost 3 hours, I honestly didn't feel the much of the weight of the movie, in the sense that it felt like it had a good pace to it. I think the characters were very well defined, even though it had a bit of a slow start. I think there's kind of a prelude to the movie, kind of sets up the entire French 75 group and sets up some of the characters. I think the crux of the movie, which I enjoy, is kind of twofold. Like the first is just this father-daughter relationship that's in the film. I found it compelling and interesting, and I felt there was an emotional stake to the movie that kind of kept it moving along. And the other part that I enjoyed about it is this kind of humorous angle of Leo DiCaprio's character just being this almost like this washed out revolutionary who's drawn back into this world almost unwillingly and has to try to remember what codes were used and how to do things. And he's kind of coming to terms with this new kind of sense of revolution from a new generation. And I found it all to be very, very funny and very compelling. So I'm very positive on the film. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Well, thank you for expressing it so clearly and setting up a lot of the things that we'll probably be talking about in just a couple of minutes. Howard, how about you? What's your general take?
I thought it was pretty wonderful overall. I think there are issues with the opening scenes. It's the satire there isn't quite landing. The jokes aren't quite working for me in that first part, but once you get to the turn in the road, it really takes off. And there are scenes of incredible brilliance when it comes to directing and acting. There's this whole one really long sequence that just doesn't stop moving. It is just really brilliant. Overall, I also didn't feel the length of the movie at all. So I certainly agree with that. Sean Penn is brilliant. DiCaprio is really good. I did sometimes think, oh, if only Joaquin Phoenix had been playing this role, but
Right.
Leonardo DiCaprio was really good. Good supporting cast. A funny use of names. We can talk about those, how some of the names were chosen and what they mean. But overall, very, very positive. One of my favorite Paul Thomas Andersons, but some of other people's favorites, Paul Thomas Andersons, are not mine. So, as usual, I have a contrarian streak to me.
All right. Well, it's a good thing that you mentioned the contrarian streak right now because I am the lone person on the other side of the canyon listening to the echo from the rest of the world about this film. I loathed this film. I really disliked it intensely. Uh, it's a story that, look, I've said it before. I'm a story guy, and I don't think that the story here is very strong. I can indulge a movie that wants to be about tone and attitude if it's done well. And I've seen films from Paul Thomas Anderson that have done that well before. I did not think he was successful on this. The action scenes, I know people have been highly praising them. Some of them are fine. I especially like the chase, the car chase that we have toward the end of the film. But the other sequences that you guys are talking about, I think I've seen in other films done better in other films by people who are action directors who know what they're doing. And I just think Paul Thomas Anderson is out of his depth. I don't want to say depth. That makes it sound like he's not competent. I just don't think he's as comfortable in doing it as he needs to be to sell it. I could not tell what this film was about. And 10 minutes into the film, I'm going to say it now early on, there were people in the there were characters in the story that I was wishing into the cornfield. I just could not understand why anybody would be sympathetic or interested in these people. I thought that they were unappealing, irritating, and unlike Howard, who seems to approve of Sean Penn, I am I think he's doing a caricature and not a very good caricature of a cartoon that is not as menacing as it's supposed to be. I think that there are a lot of things that probably could have gone a different way and made this work. Um, and there are just a lot of themes in this that I think are also problematic. I do think that the fact that DiCaprio has to recognize that what he's done to himself as a character was maybe the best thing in the movie. I thought that that made a lot of sense. And there are a couple of scenes that I appreciated. I could tell that they wanted there to be a lot of humor in the movie. There just wasn't. And one of the examples that I think is easy to point to is something that's in the trailer that you can laugh at in the trailer, but when it plays out in the movie, there is no laugh there whatsoever. And I don't think it's just because it got pimped in the trailer. It just falls flat because it's edited differently. And like I said, we'll talk about that when we get into specifics. So, I'm like I said, I'm the lone voice of insanity out here. It's just everything will strike people differently, and this was one that I was I was looking forward to because I am a PTA fan for the most part. I think I've seen 7 of the 9 films that he's made, and 2 of them are strong favorites of mine. I think Boogie Nights is brilliant, and I love Magnolia, and there are a couple of others that I appreciate as well. I know a lot of people love There Will Be Blood, and I think that's a solid film, but this one was not my cup of tea. It didn't work for me, and I'm glad that other people are satisfied with it.
Well, don't hold back, Richard. Tell us
Yeah.
how you really feel.
For a contingent out there, Richard, you're the lone voice of reason. So
Well,
Yes.
I'm sure there are people out there who are not, I found one other person online that I would read on a pretty regular basis who he didn't loathe the picture the way I did, but he was not effusive in its praise. I think he recognized a lot of the same shortcomings that I've seen, but everybody else seems to be incredibly high on this movie, and I'm glad to talk about those things that you guys like so much. So whenever you pick out something that you want to talk about, let's talk about it. Howard, did you had a one scene that you were talking about that you thought was really phenomenal? Why don't we start
Well,
with that? Tell us which scene it was and what it is that you thought about it.
no, it's a very long set of scenes, and it pretty much starts when the alert goes out, and the army, or this actually not army, it's a group under his command, under uh, Lockjaw's command, starts coming in, and from that point on, up until maybe the convent or a little past there, is just incredibly brilliant for me. Uh, Everything, the editing, the direct, and the humor really starts coming through at that point. With, I'll tell you my favorite scene when we get to spoilers, but the scene when they get into that smallish town and Lockjaw arrives and they alert the National Guard and they do this and they do that and everything like that. Just brilliant. Just absolutely brilliant for me. Um, and after that, it just works out very well for me. Um, Thematically, there may be some issues, and it could be what is throwing you off because at times what it pretends to be about is not really what it's about. It's not really an analysis of anarchist and fascist because it has this melodramatic plot in the middle that really doesn't have anything to do with fascism or anarchism, really, you know. And so so I did think that that was something a little off there.
Yeah, I do want to talk about
Because
that.
in many ways, nothing is really at stake. I mean, if Lockjaw succeeds, it's bad, but it's not earth shattering. If he loses, if he doesn't succeed, the world goes on as it was before. And that may be, of course, the point of the movie, but yeah, Lockjaw's goal has nothing to do really, or has nothing to do really with fascism exactly. He acts fascistically, but it's not really because it's too personal. His goal is far too personal. So I think there is that
Okay.
throws things off. But I just thought it was, as I said, you're wrong, Richard. You're wrong, 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 wrong.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time, but it'll be the first time today.
It wouldn't be the first time for me either. So there you got it.
Rashab, how do you feel about some of the things that Howard was talking about? Do you think he's right that the motivation of Captain Lockjaw, I guess he finally becomes Colonel Lockjaw after a period of time, is really changes the idea that this is about fascism and anarchism into a more personal kind of confrontation? Or do you think that the stereotypes are too strong to kind of overlook the political issues that are going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd maybe even take a step back. I mean, I want to agree with Howard to an extent because I think the political currency of this movie is probably going to be construed however it will be from people of all beliefs and systems of belief. But I think basically, I would agree with Howard that it's not so much really about revolutionaries as much it is about sort of a passing down of legacy between a father and a daughter. And it's kind of a backdrop. The entire revolutionary subplot, I mean, the plot overall to me is a backdrop to the main theme, which is really about passing down a certain type of spirit and also kind of a curse from generation to generation. The way I see it is it's a story about a father trying to protect his daughter and a daughter kind of learning about this entire side of her father's life that is coming back to chase her and coming back to haunt her, and something she didn't really even know about, something she'd ignored for so long, right? When it comes to like the Sean Penn's character Lockjaw, I think he is more of a plot device, and his caricature to me that there is a humor around it because I feel it's an exaggeration of certain elements we do see in real society and in real political climates around. But I think he is a caricature. He's an exaggeration, and I think PTA as a director set him up to be an exaggeration in that way. And it's more. I don't know if I would fixate so much on his motivations as much as what it represents as a character to the other characters, which is sort of this evil blockade of progress and of the beliefs of the entire Fringe 75 movement. And so I feel that the main themes of this film really aren't quite as political as some people probably make them out to be. Of course, there is that undertone to it, there is that backdrop to it. But to me, I see this film as much more character focused than politics forward than most people, I would say. I think the way that PTA integrated the politics, I think worked well for the story. But to me, it's a character driven narrative.
Yeah, from the political perspective, I can see that people on both sides, both ends of the extremes, by the way, not most people, but people on the extremes would find plenty of things in here to be crazed and upset about. From the right, this fuels their fantasy about the left wing. It's trying to undermine the way of life through its revolutionary anarchic approaches and the nutty things that people believe. And from the left perspective, that there's a cabal of white supremacists who are somehow managing an internal hidden oligarch to maintain power and control that's going on. Both of those, for lack of better word, conspiracy fantasies are fueled by things that are going on in the story here. I do think that there are a couple of funny bits that reflect disdain about both of those kinds of political points of view. And I wanted them to hit a little bit more because I know that there is supposed to be kind of a sarcastic, humorous tone on this. I think the problem is that this film can't decide whether it wants to be a satire or whether it wants to be a legitimate action piece. And that's part of the problem. The two things that I was thinking of, there's a point where DiCaprio is on the phone trying to get through to his former colleagues, and forgetting the password is one thing, but when he is talking to the guy and he asks his location, and he says, "I'm in a spot between the two," what is the phrase that he uses?
Are you referring to the seized land?
Yes,
Joe?
there you go. That's the seized lands of this group and the seized lands of that group. And I'm going, that's the way that the right would look at the left in a mocking tone. They're so
Yeah.
particular about their political identity and being correct in the way they refer to things that they can't just say out loud where they are. They've got to use some descriptive signal that's going to get them acknowledged as being the true believers that they are. On the other side, we have a group of people, the Christmas Adventurers Club, who greet one another with, Hail Santa. I mean, it's just like it's a mocking of those people who see, the attack on Christmas as a conspiracy by the left to destroy certain principles. So I kind of like the idea that there are things here that are going after both of the extremes to some degree. But like I said, the problem is that I don't think that plays as a satire most of the time. These
Mhm.
are few and far between. And when they happen, they're fine. But the rest of the time, it just doesn't feel like it's gelling in that regard. And instead, it's supposed to be, like I said, a more straightforward drama with action to it. And I didn't find the drama and action all that compelling, and there wasn't enough satire in it to satisfy me, at least.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I feel in tone wise, the entire film almost plays out like a bit of a pulp narrative and a little bit of a melodrama. But I think the satire to me is a little bit more dry or a little bit more nuanced. I think there are times where they kind of have spelled out satirical dialogue, like the moments you mentioned, Richard. But I think there's sort of a kind of a undertone, like a satirical undertone, where everything is this extreme, which I think you already kind of hinted at, and I think PTA is kind of playing with that as much as there are moments where he'll actually spell it out. And of course, there's relevant imagery, relevant scenes where we see immigration detention centers are a big part of the film. There is kind of a poking at timely things, but I do think to an extent you're right, where it's the satire isn't necessarily the main focus, but I think it was integrated in a way where it was woven through the film in a nice way.
Well, like I said, it was there occasionally. I just, from
Yeah.
my point of view, it was not satisfying enough in the amount and the attention that got paid to that. And part of that might be the marketing issue that I was mentioning before. The the one trailer that seemed to play for this film has a sequence in it where Willa, in confronting her father, says, that's the way the cards rolled out for me. And her father kind of corrects her and says, cards don't roll out, dice roll out. And it's a funny bit in the trailer. But when I'm watching it in the film, it doesn't come across that way. It just comes across very flat. I don't think it was cut. It's cut in the trailer at the right spot to make it land as a joke. And in the film itself, it doesn't have that cut. It just feels like something that he's saying out loud. It doesn't emphasize the stupidity both of the original metaphor and the point of correcting the metaphor.
Mm.
Howard, what else did you see in the film that you liked? Because there were a couple of things that I liked, like I said, but not enough
Oh,
to recommend it for
we'll
me.
have
But
to get into spoilers, I think.
oh, okay. So
Uh,
we'll hang on for a minute on the spoilers there. Um,
I
I
think I
don't.
can say this about the opening scenes, which weren't working for me and were the weakest part of the film, and that's because there, Anderson is trying to equate anarchy and fascism, that people only join these things to have better sex, which is an interesting satiric point, but the laughs just weren't there for me. The satiric point wasn't landing in a comic enough way. And I thought, oh, is this what the whole movie's going to be like? And then it wasn't. And that's why. But that's why the opening scenes don't quite work for me. The satire isn't landing there. The satire starts landing much better after that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that whole opening sequence where we get a series of acts by, is it the French 75 or the France
Yep.
75? French
Frank
75.
75.
You know, was it was okay. I understand what
Yeah.
they're trying to do to kind of establish what this group is doing, and it doesn't really establish why they're doing it or where they came from, but they are an active group that has fervent adherence to it. But I think Howard is focused in on one thing that immediately just should have been funny and should have told us we're getting a shift in what's going on here, and that's when what's her name, Perfidia,
Perfidia.
confronts Captain Lockjaw in his sleeping position and demands that he give himself an erection as a way to take control of the situation. I'm just going, yeah, it's not funny. It's supposed to pay off like it's funny when he stands up and he's, got his pants sticking out like it was a joke from a Mel Brooks movie. But but it just struck me as being odd, and I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. And then as it develops, I kind of see that there's this dynamic that's going on between these characters, but it never apparently it felt powerful enough to the captain slash colonel to pursue, and her participation in it seemed to be minimal at best. And by the way, that's one of the reasons that the character is problematic, because her participation in in any other relationship she has is only casual at best, including her husband and her child. She felt really like a character that they were trying to get off screen as fast as possible, and I don't blame them, because she was maybe the second most unpleasant character in the movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. I mean, I would agree the opening scenes to me are also the weakest part of the movie, and to an extent, yeah, I actually agree, Richard. Like, I feel like her character maybe wasn't as well sketched out as PTA had imagined, especially because I think at the end, okay, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but we do get a reference back to her towards the end of the film in a kind of emotional angle, but I felt like at that point, I didn't know if that payoff worked as well as that could have. It could have worked better, I think, basically if they had written her character a little bit more closely, or a little bit more in a nuanced way in the beginning, for that emotional payoff to happen at the end. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, I
sentiment.
don't think that feels earned, and we can talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that when we get into the spoiler section. The middle section has the kind of the early chase sequences where the characters are entangled with Benicio del Toro's group, where there is the police intervention, where the high school characters get involved for a brief period of time.
Mhm.
And so that's probably where we should be going next. Um, were there any of those sets of people or situations that you thought were important, or conversely irrelevant, that could have been cut down? Because this, like you said, this was a 3-hour movie, and there might have
Mhm.
been some things that could have been eliminated, but it sounds like you guys were all both fine with how long it was. I didn't understand, like, that opening sequence with Bob talking to her friends when they come to pick her up. That just felt incredibly long, unnecessary. It didn't accomplish anything, and it made him seem like, well, the burnout that he is. But not only a burnout, but just a cranky old burnout. Like the old man sitting on the lawn telling the neighbor kids to stay off.
I think that scene, I mean, if I go into that scene, I feel like it has a relevance in the sense that it kind of sets up two things for me. The first is that we get a little bit more of a sense that his character is no longer the revolutionary that he was. He is kind of this washed out burnout guy who's, screaming at the young kids, which I thought was a bit funny, because it was funny how the film sets him up as kind of this, you could say, like, for lack of better terms, like a hip revolutionary who's doing the right thing in the beginning of the film, and now there's this entire young generation that's thinking differently. Some of them have different pronouns that they're using that he's not familiar with, and he's just yelling, trying to be a dad, and all being confused about it, which I thought was kind of a funny moment. But also, I think to an extent, it also sets up kind of how protective he is of his daughter as well, right? He's kind of telling off her friends to make sure that she, is prepared in case something comes back up, which it eventually does, from his past. So I think it was, again, more of a character tell moment, and a little bit of a humorous moment too. So I felt like that scene worked to an extent. Like for the scenes you're mentioning about like the Benicio del Toro group and that entire sequence, I think it was really the technical craft around those scenes that helped give it that propulsive feeling. Like for example, I don't think Benicio del Toro's character was even that well set up, but then once the film kind of gets going into that section and to an extent, I think it's the acting. I think Del Toro is such a great actor. He can make a scene like that work, even when his character is not very well developed. And PTA as a director brings kind of a propulsive feeling to that scene that made that whole sequence work and make it feel engaging and humorous at the same time. So I'd probably take that route and say that those scenes were worth it to add to that 3 hour runtime.
My favorite part of the scene with the greeting the kids is when he say, "Well, is it a they or a them?" And or I mean, and she says it's binary. It's not that hard. He says, "Well, I just want to be polite," and I thought that was funny. The
Yeah.
favorite scene there is through line there is Caprio trying to both get a hold of the old group or trying to plug in his phone just so he can get power. And then he calls, and it's like a call to that I make to the cable company,
Yes.
where you just start screaming at them because what is wrong with you, And I thought that was absolutely hysterical. I thought that was great. One of the important things I think, and can't say that Anderson was trying to make this point, is the revolution that DiCaprio was engaged in the beginning was in many ways meaningless. The targets they made were sort of general and vague. They didn't really have a goal that was going to accomplish really much. Benicio del Toro is totally different. He's a real revolutionary. He is one who's doing God's work. And this contrast between these anarchists who, are just, they're done with, they're old, they don't have anything to offer, with this new group that definitely is much better organized, has a much stronger goal, is just much better. I think it's an interesting contrast.
Well, I
But
think that Del Toro's group is supposed to be casually competent, and the original group is the French 75. At this point, is frenetically incompetent, despite the fact that they're supposed to be well prepared and trained. They,
I think I can't agree that they're casually competent. They're incredibly competent. They have everything planned out to the
which
last
well,
degree.
that's why they can be so casual about things. Del Toro walks through the
Oh,
whole
yeah,
environment
okay.
without
Yeah, I take
without a
your point
worry in
there.
the world, because he knows exactly what he's going to do, how it's going to get
Right.
done, who's going to be doing X, Y, and Z, and so he handles it with
You're right.
aplomb. Whereas
Yeah,
whereas the other characters in the other group,
they're
they
freaking out.
they're freaking out and nitpicky on one end and frantic on the other end. And
Um,
I agree with you, by the way, that the phone conversation and the car chase at the end were my two scenes in the film that I thought worked really well. And it's easy to understand the phone interaction for the very reason that you just mentioned. Anybody who's run into an officious person who is looking for, I'm sorry, I need your 3-digit code before we can proceed. And you've given them your name, your address, your phone number, your social security number, the name of your ex-wife, the number of children that you have, the place of birth, and the fact that you can't remember a number that you were supposed to have committed to memory 16 years ago is incredibly frustrating. And all of us, like you said, calling the cable company, trying to get an appointment to get your car fixed. It's become that kind of a world, and I thought that was quite amusing. The fact that he also is struggling to plug in his phone the whole time he's being chased, I thought that was also kind of funny. So that's a funny element of the film. Uh, Rashab, was there anything that was humorous that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you wanted to draw some attention to?
I mean, I think you guys hit on the main parts. I think again, the humor to me was those were probably the most spelled out humorous parts. I think it's funny you bring up the phone charging thing because I think it added such a funny, like frantic element to the entire thing, and the fact that he was high the entire time I thought was really, really funny, and just knowing that his brain's fried and that maybe he could have actually, responded with the correct code if he hadn't been, smoking it up like 5 minutes before and not have his phone charged and everything. So it was just funny the way that Leo played it too, in my opinion, of just being like this guy who used to be like, the weapons expert, the demolition expert of this group, and now he's just like trying to get his phone charged and try to save his daughter. I think that entire sequence was really funny overall.
Okay. Well, while we're still in the middle of the film, Howard, I think it was you who said that there was a kind of a subplot that seemed superfluous to you. Is that the Christmas Adventurers Club?
No, I don't.
What
Not
was
at
the
all.
what was the section that you
Oh,
thought was unnecessary?
I didn't. I thought it was
Oh,
unnecessary. Yeah.
I guess maybe it was
I think
Rashad's.
what I was
One
saying
of
is
you was
that,
referring to something that was not needed.
well, I think what I said, and I don't think it's necessarily negative, is that the outcome of Lockjaw's thing really makes no difference to anything. If he gets Willa and kills her, well, he becomes part of this group, but it's not going to change the group particularly. If he doesn't get her, it's not going to change the group particularly. So it's it's not exactly like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where Indiana Jones's actions have no bearing whatever on the outcome
On the
of the
long-term
story. But
outcomes.
yeah, but Lockjaws doesn't really. You're still going to have this fascist organization called the Christmas Club, and and maybe he'll be a member of it, but it won't make any difference in the long run. But I don't think that's
No,
a negative. Yeah.
yeah, I understood that point that you were making before, and I kind of agree with what you were saying there. I thought there was something else that you suggested was not necessary, but maybe I'm just conflating the two things, and
Yeah.
so I'll have to when I'm listening back and editing, I'm going to see if I can detect where I
Well,
went wrong, where I went off the rails on that.
that there are a couple of things that bothered me, but the main thing that bothered me is that they were betrayed twice, and they were always betrayed by diverse people. They were betrayed by Perfidia, who is
Right?
black, and then they got the telephone number from the non-binary character.
Oh, I
And I'm
see.
going, that bothered me. That really bothered me. I didn't quite understand. I didn't understand why he had the non-binary person, Dreyer, when he had four people there, any of which could have done it. So I didn't understand his choice there. Perfidia is more obvious because you're going to prison for 30 to 40 years. I'm still not sure I believe that she would have betrayed the group. I think she might have said, okay, I'll go to prison. But at least she has the motivation for it. And so that did bother me.
All right.
And I also have another question.
Sure.
I don't quite get the Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, Hooterville Junction.
I didn't
It's
understand this at first either until I found the lyrics to the revolution will not be televised, and
always is from that. Because I
it's
kept going, it's Petticoat Junction. It's not Hooterville Junction. I know Hooterville is the location where it all takes
yeah. So
place.
it's a line from that song that is kind of the theme of the movie,
Thank
and
you. Thank
and
you, because I'm going,
I didn't know that either. I mean, I've heard the riff of that song a few times, you know, but I've never listened to the whole song itself, and I didn't realize that. And then when I was doing, I forget where I saw it. I think maybe I saw it on a video where they were reviewing the movie, and it came up, and I said, "Oh, I see. That's where that comes from, and that's why there's a reference to it." At least that's what I assume.
I was just saying that now that Howard knows this, he can finally rest easy at night.
mm,
Yes.
Yes, thank you
Yes.
for that.
Okay. Good deal. I'm glad that there was something that came out of it that was useful to us. Um, well, are there characters that we haven't talked about that you wanted to talk about before we move on to the spoiler section?
I'll
Uh,
throw one in, actually. I mean, Regina Hall's character, who I think was, very, very underutilized, not did not have much of a role, especially for a performer who's like, such a strong at acting, and just didn't really have much except to kind of play the transport to an extent, and give Willa kind of the lowdown of what's going on, and kind of a exposition mouthpiece at times. I didn't think her
she's
character
the
was.
exposition truck
uh,
driver.
yeah, exactly. And I felt like, if anything, I was just surprised that Regina Hall decided to play such a minor character who didn't really have much of a bearing on the plot. So I just wanted to mention that. I mean, she's a great actress, and I just was surprised to see her play such a minor part in this movie.
Yeah, I saw her listed as like the third or fourth person listed in the credits, and I'm going, uh, she's maybe third or fourth from the bottom in the number of lines that she
Yeah,
has
yeah.
and the amount of interaction she has with the other characters. So it was strange, but she is a name that probably does draw some attention to the film. So I could see why she would be prominently placed in the credits, and why they would want to have her in the film, even if she doesn't contribute as much as a character as she might.
Well, Paul Thomas Anderson is sort of probably getting to the point where anybody wants to be in his movie just to be in his movie, and they'll take
Hmm.
smaller parts and things like that just to say I've done a Paul Thomas Anderson movie.
Yeah, I could see that. I
The
could see
one
that.
question I asked, and it's just I couldn't quite place the actor, and it's the head guy of the Christmas club who looks so familiar.
Hmm.
The
And I
older
don't know if that
actor
was, yeah,
with the white hair, or are you talking about the other
yeah,
guy?
yeah.
Yeah,
And he looks, I could not figure out who he was. I don't, it's not Donald Moffat, was it?
no, 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 it's not.
I didn't think so. When Lockjaw, no, it's not when Lockjaw goes in to meet. It's when, oh, what's his name? The one who's assigned to take out Lockjaw and solve the problem, goes in to meet, and there's this character
Oh,
at the head of the table, old, white haired. So he just looks so familiar,
yeah, no, I know
and
exactly who you're
I couldn't
talking
place it.
about, and I'm trying to remember his name because he is a familiar character actor.
Oh, I
And
wonder
I'm
if it's Kevin Tighe.
That's who it is.
Yeah. Okay. Now I can
That's who it is.
sleep at night too. So I've got both of those resolved.
Well, we're going to drop the spoiler wall here. We're well into our discussion here, but there were some things that we wanted to talk about in regard to the film that might be spoilers. So those of you listening, if you don't want to be spoiled on anything about the film, uh, you probably want to pause your listening experience now and wait until you've seen the movie. And the rest of you, here we go. We're going to dig into the spoiler territory now. So Howard, I know there were a couple things in particular that you wanted to mention that you held off on. What did you want to cover?
Oh, I'm sorry. We already covered
Okay,
it.
well, never mind then. I apologize. There are a couple of things that I would put in here. First of all,
Okay.
the uh, the whole subplot about, look, it turns out that Willa, the daughter, is not the daughter of um, Bob, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. He thinks she is, but she is in fact the daughter of our antagonist, Tom Lockjaw. And it comes from the weird romantic relationship, or at least sexual relationship, I should say. Although I think he saw it as a romantic relationship because he's bringing flowers at one point to Perfidia,
Right.
and so he probably had some idea of romance that's going on in there. And we have an extended sequence where they blather about a DNA test and what it all ends up meaning. And that's kind of the section where I thought that Sean Penn, you know, really just kind of slathered through the role that he was playing. I did like his performance that comes after he's supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, why does he have to die? I don't. That was completely unnecessary. The second appearance of him after the car crash and the shooting that takes place on the road, except that they get a chance to, mock the Adventurers Club one more time and give Sean Penn an additional death scene. That seems strange
Well,
to
I
me.
mean, he knows too much about the Christmas Club, but also, he didn't resolve the problem. His kid was still alive, uh, and he just sort of knows too much, and he's a pain in the ass, and he's caused so much problems. I mean, everything he did was on his
Well, I
own.
understand.
I mean, he took this.
Yeah, I know. I understand why the
Yeah.
Christmas Adventurers Club wanted to get rid of him. I just don't understand why they needed to have two deaths for him. He got shot in the face and killed in a car crash. And by the way, the guy who is responsible for killing him is, in spite of all of the perceived competence that he exhibits earlier in the film, is incompetent enough to leave a live man in the vehicle after a crash that he's just shot, and he bothered to get out of the car and check. I
Yeah, he should have shot him
Yeah,
again. I
that
agree
doesn't
with
make
that.
any sense to me, but
The
that's, a movie bit, I guess.
the thing that I questioned is why the Christmas Club cares whether Lockjaw had a relationship with a black woman and even had a kid. That's never stopped the Ku Klux Klan
Well,
from having
they are
members
probably,
with white
yeah,
people.
they're obviously a
Uh,
different strain of purists and racists than we're familiar with. They're not the Klan. And that was another thing about the group, by the way, that I thought was different. Up until the last part of the film, when the chase starts, the car chase starts, the guys in the Christmas Adventurers Club were all uh, professionals, relatively facile. They didn't seem, you wouldn't be thinking that they on their face were they're not covered in Nazi tattoos. They don't dress like they are hillbilly racists sitting on the porch until the end when we get that trope thrown in. Where when Willa is handcuffed to the bench on the porch and the other guy is out there, in his, wife
right.
beater shirt and long, unclean hair and disheveled appearance, drinking a beer and kind of acting superior, despite the fact that he clearly is one of the dredges of humanity. Up until that point, everybody, it
These
seemed like they were a corporate executive.
Well, yeah. I mean, the guy, the neo-Nazi, was not part of the Christmas Club and had nothing to do with it. That was
That's
someone
their,
that Sean
that's
Penn
their,
was making use of.
Yeah. I
The
think
the point though that you might make is that what does the Christmas Club do?
yeah, we don't really know.
I mean, yeah. So what is their threat? Why does someone want to be a member of it? They have all this power. Well, if they have all this power, like so many movies like this, where you have this secret organization, this red state that's actually running everything, your first response is, well, they're doing a really bad job of it.
That's
Because they can't achieve their goals. They only get rid of people after that person gives enough information to keep the plot going. They can't make any significant changes in the government. So I'm going, oh, what? But they're sort of like the anarchists in the beginning. They're not making any
right,
significant changes either.
both ineffectual but damaging.
Right.
yeah. Another thing I
Yes.
thought was interesting was like you mentioned why would they care about Lockjaw? And it's interesting like the first time he meets with the club, they're very dead set on like all these requirements that you need to fulfill, and that's the only way you can get in, and we're gonna do this Patriot, check on you and all these things. And then when they do find out something, I guess they were committed enough to keeping him in the group that they're like, okay, we gotta just clean this up and we really want you, so we'll go through all these lengths to make sure, you can actually fulfill the requirements of being in the group, which I thought was a bit far-fetched, but I guess it worked for the script and where they were trying to go. But I felt that was a bit of a logical leap.
I'm not
But yeah, if
sure
it's
what you're
something.
referring to there, because I think once they discover that he has had a relationship with the woman
Yeah.
and the child is likely to be his, that
Hmm.
they basically put the contract out on him. It's not how do we keep him in the group, it's how do we get rid of him and his offspring so that we don't have that contaminating our group.
But in the end, I guess they kind of do accept him in the group later on, right?
Well,
No, no, just the opposite. They kill him at the end.
yeah,
I see. Okay,
yeah.
okay. No, okay, I see. That makes
You
sense
know,
actually.
They gas him. They gas him
he
at
he
the end.
he basically reports back to the group, and they continue the interview, pretending that they are in fact considering him for membership, and they let him continue to lie to them. Which, by the way, they comes up with a phrase that I think is going to be memorable from the film. The semen demon. I
Yes.
think that
And the rape in
yes,
reverse.
rape in reverse. That and then they just get rid of him like the trash that they think he is at that point.
Okay, no, you're right. You're right. I misunderstood
Misremembered
that.
or
Got it. Yes, yeah,
well,
yeah.
sequencing is tough. Have you
I
only
mean,
seen it one time?
I've only seen it once and I saw it on
Yeah,
Thursday.
me too. And that's one of those things that happens sometimes. I see, I'm not, I can't take notes during a movie, and it sometimes helps if I can go back and look at something a second time to make sure that I have the context and the sequence of things correct. And I don't always get that. So don't feel bad. I've done that on numerous occasions.
Should have
well,
wiki the plot.
I think the plot issue that I have there is that Longshaw's not subtle. He flies in with this small battalion
Oh yeah.
of soldiers using a government helicopter, using government soldiers. And I'm going, what's going to happen when your general, superior officer, finds out you did this? And even afterwards, he disappears. Well, isn't someone going to come looking for him? So you do wonder that. I mean, like I said, he's just very bad at it. He's going about it in the worst way possible because all he's doing is calling attention to himself and to the Christmas Club group. If it ever comes out that he's doing all this to be a member of this small group, he's not very subtle.
Yeah, I would agree with
Uh,
that. Well, I mean, subtlety is not I mean, you just look at the character from the very beginning and you know that this is going to be an extreme character for the whole film. The one other thing that I wanted to mention was in the car chase. The one thing that really stood out to me that was different and unique about this chase was the way that Willa cleverly used the road
oh,
to
that was brilliant.
thwart her pursuers. Yes, and I don't know, Howard. I know that you lived in California for a long time. Did you ever go on those roads, 395 up to uh, Bishop through the upper desert? Because that's exactly the way those roads
No,
are. And
yeah,
I've been on those roads driving at, you know, the speed limit is 70 miles an hour up there, and I probably went a little bit faster than that. But cars going faster than me were passing me, and I just thought, man, if anybody is slower in front, you're going to rear end them. And of course, if they stop,
yeah,
you're not going to see them because you are coming up over those hills, those ridges, very fast. And I thought that was a clever way for her to get the advantage in that situation.
yeah, I agree.
And I hadn't seen that before, and I like that quite well. Yeah, and when you were talking about the Beverly Hillbillies Hooterville thing, when Willa goes through that routine, when she's seeing her dad or Bob, she sees him and who he is. Why she would be going through the password routine at that point doesn't make much sense, except that he's kind of convinced her that she needs to do that, and
Well, I think she's in
yeah.
shock. She's just she's traumatized at that
Yeah.
point.
All
So
right.
Also felt like it was a thematic moment of like here's a young person who cannot trust anyone anymore. I
Okay, I
also
could
read it
see
that
that.
way.
But,
Yeah, it's a mix of both, I'd say. Yeah.
she's supposed to trust the person implicitly who responds to her that way when the bat signal goes off. I don't know how else you refer to it.
Yeah.
Their secret pager that they've created. Uh, and that person essentially betrays her too. I mean, it's kind of a weird scenario that they have. The whole thing with the encampment of the nuns. I could never tell if they were going to support her or if they were going to destroy her. It was very unclear which direction it was going, and so I could understand why she would have trust issues. But why she should have trust issues with her dad. The thing that Howard said maybe is the best explanation for it, that she's in shock. She just
Yeah. Yeah.
was in a car chase and killed somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm traumatized too by the film, but we're going to finish our trauma here and close up our discussion here. Do you have any final thoughts that we didn't get a chance to talk about? Rashab, anything that you wanted to finish up with before we move on?
Nothing else to add. I think, again, I think for me, I mean, just giving context, I haven't seen a lot of great movies this year, I feel. But this one was one I enjoyed, and it kind of feels memorable, at least, even with some story issues and things like that. I think it's memorable from the way that it's made, and I like the way that PTA assembled the movie together. To me, again, it didn't feel like 3 hours. It was paced well. It had kind of this pulp melodrama feel to it. It had humor that did work in parts, and overall, I think it came out as one of the stronger movies to come out this year for sure. Again, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying it's one of the best movies of the decade. I feel like, we've reached the point where there's so few good movies that whenever one that's like halfway decent comes out, we really tend to overblow it. But if you feel that way, that and you really feel that it's one of the best, then more power to you. I would say it's still a very strong movie and definitely the strongest, one of the strongest of the year. Um, while I wouldn't call it a masterpiece by any measure, I think it's more of it's actually a surprisingly approachable movie for PTA, a very kind of entertaining pulp movie, which I think is quite accessible. The audience I saw it with, I saw it in IMAX. I know some people also seeing it in 70 millimeter. Be curious to see how that experience is, but people seem to be enjoying it, which I think was good, and I felt like it was a good experience overall.
All right. Howard, final thoughts?
I will add a little thing because as I was preparing for this, because of the use of the name Lockjaw, I thought I'd try and find out if there are meanings to other names. And all the names have meanings. They were carefully chosen. But I think the least favorite in many ways is Lockjaw because it's just not very subtle. Charles Dickens did the same thing, but he used the name John Dice for to reference jaundice, which is the same as lockjaw. Here they just go out with lockjaw, but I think Throckmorton is my favorite. It means a Throckmorton sign is a medical sign in which a prolonged erection points towards the site of a hip or pelvic fracture or other injury. So good choice on that name. I really enjoy this movie. Um, I was really on Anderson's side until there were two movies which people love, and I didn't. I did not like There Will Be Blood. I did not like The Master. Especially didn't like The Master. And then he starts making this comeback. He does The Phantom Thread, which is really good. I mean, it was entertaining. And then he does Licorice Pizza, which I loved. And now he does this. So I guess for me, I'd say as much as it means to anybody, he's back, and I'm glad he's back.
All right. And I'll just finish off by saying, I think that Boogie Nights is a masterpiece and that One Battle After Another is a disaster piece. It's just not the kind of film that appealed to me at all. It's got a few things in it that I could enjoy, but they were few and far between in a 3-hour film. And I can't really say it's an effective action film. You know, I think Rashab referred to it at one point as like a a pulp action movie. And I've seen so many of those pulp action films where they do the chase scenes and the humor and the wise guy persona so much better because they're used to doing it. And I just didn't think it worked here. It felt like he was trying to do something that didn't quite fit his comfort zone. Uh, I think Sean Penn is a fine actor, but is basically used as a cartoon here. And I didn't think it was a very entertaining cartoon. It wasn't as well drawn as it might have been. So I'll leave it at that metaphor, and we'll take a quick break here. We're going to hear from a fellow Lamb Podcasting Network show, and then be back for our exit question in just a moment.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, Bubba Wheat.
Hey, did you know the song Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel, he was actually talking about his penis?
What? The whole time?
Yeah, it's, he was talking about having sex. And did you know that the song Blinding Lights by The Weeknd was actually about driving under the influence?
Under the influence? I figured driving because of the lights, but under the influence as well?
And did you know that Weapon of Choice was actually about Dune?
No. Now I know you're lying.
Could be. And at Lyrical Innuendo, we actually discuss these songs and more and decide if they are really about sex, drugs, or if they're just rock and roll. And you can find the newest episodes on Spotify and everything else at rabbitholepodcasts.com.
We're back, and the exit question of the week exists primarily because our featured director today, Paul Thomas Anderson, has frequently been cited as one of the best directors of the contemporary era, along with directors like David Fincher and Christopher Nolan. He's probably seen as being at the vanguard of American and English language directors, at least. I know that there are foreign language directors that are also quite prominent and seen as being essential. So I thought we'd just play the Mount Rushmore game. I'm sure everybody has seen that. Who are the four faces that you'd put on your Mount Rushmore of great directors? Only in this case, I've asked our guests to limit it to working directors who are still alive. So I didn't give them a super specific guideline on this. I will tell you that when I was coming up with my list, they had to have made a movie in the last couple of years, and they have to be directors that I see as being fairly contemporary. I struggled with a couple because there are certainly directors who are living that I would say are the greatest directors of all time, but I was trying to focus on sort of our recent group. But I still ended up having at least one decrepit person in there, and actually maybe two. So we'll see how it goes. Howard, let's start with you. Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
Well, actually, I broke the rules in a way because the instructions you gave us made it difficult because you had filmmakers still working and contemporary filmmakers, which for me wasn't the same
Right.
thing. So I actually did 3 lists because I thought it was interesting how things changed. And I did a list for before the New Hollywood, then the New Hollywood, and then the postmodern.
I'm
Hollywood.
perfectly
And I
happy
thought it
with
was
that. That's not a problem.
Yeah. And what I thought was interesting is that before the New Hollywood, there was no American-born person on it. For the New Hollywood and after, it's all American. And now for contemporary, there's only one American on it. So I thought it was very interesting how the cycle went. So before the New Hollywood, you have Alfred Hitchcock, who became an American citizen, but was, born in Britain. Jean-Luc Godard, Ingrid Bergman, and Akira Kurosawa. Then you get to the New Hollywood. And for me, that's Spielberg, Scorsese, Woody Allen, and David Lynch. And then for contemporary, Tarantino, Bong Joon-ho, Yorgos Lanthimos, and Mikhail Haneke.
And all of those are names that went through my head at one point or other as well, for different reasons. I didn't come up with the 3 different lists that you have. I just don't have that many mountains to carve. So I limited my list to one set, and I'm still battling over whether or not I should be including some
I
people on
know.
it. But before
Yeah.
before I reveal mine, which are fairly conventional and no big surprises there, let's see if Rashab has some surprises for us.
I do have two surprises. So I tried to focus on the contemporary. And I have two picks that are the conventional picks and two that are the unconventional picks. The two conventional picks are the names that we hear thrown around in every contemporary director discussion and the greats that people consider contemporary, and that would of course be Nolan and Villeneuve. I think, especially when I think about who is crafting the image of the modern blockbuster, I just immediately think about Nolan and Villeneuve. I mean, Nolan, I think I'm not even going to spend too much time on because I think everyone's always talking about him in our film community, and we all pretty much, most of us would probably agree that he's at least, had a significant contribution to the way that we view the blockbuster. But I think Villeneuve is somebody who's following very, very closely in Nolan's full footsteps and kind of crafting his own image. And to me, it's actually interesting that I wouldn't even point so much to the Dune as the kind of big Villeneuve moment, but I'd rather point to maybe something like a Blade Runner 2049 or an Arrival as films that have kind of helped cement Villeneuve as a director who's moving the contemporary filmmaking forward. So those are my two very conventional picks. And then my two, I would say, slightly unconventional picks are both kind of indie directors who I think exemplify the term contemporary for me. The first one is Sean Baker, who I think has over time crafted the most distinctly American indie voice that we have right now in cinema. I mean, of course, Anora won Best Picture, but he's had such an impressive filmography focusing on distinctly contemporary American stories, and also, kind of helped mold the form in so many ways. You think about the way that Tangerine came together, the way that Florida Project came together, or Red Rocket, these movies that kind of investigate contemporary American life in a very interesting way, in a very observant way. So I would go first with Sean Baker. And then the other kind of contemporary filmmaker I want to highlight is Jane Schoenbrunn, whose I Saw the TV Glow came out last year. They also did We're All Going to the World's Fair in 2021. And the reason I bring up this name is because I think this is a director who is crafting the language of an internet age Hollywood, where a lot of the films that they've done are focused on the digital or internet age. So to me, that is another name that kind of exemplifies the contemporary age and brings this kind of new voice. So those are my four.
All right. Well, I've been carving on the mountain a long time, and I'm an older guy, so I don't think anybody will be too surprised at my choices, although I'm struggling at the end because there are so many who fit into that category of the new Hollywood that Howard was talking about that I would want to include. But still working, still making films that I see as essential to see. That's kind of the criteria that I used here. If is this a director that I would make the effort to see their film if it came out? And the first two were easy choices for me. Christopher Nolan, we've already mentioned. I've seen all of his films
Yeah.
and I've liked all of his films. There hasn't been one that I was unhappy with, and some of them I think are pretty spectacular. Uh, Somebody who's a little bit more hit or miss, but who is, I don't understand the world sometimes. I'm not even close to being this age, and I don't know how they have the energy to do these things. Ridley Scott works
Oh, that's a
works
good one. Yeah.
constantly, and he's always trying to do something. And sometimes it's just, Gladiator 2, which, it wasn't necessary, but had a lot of things in it that were very appealing. But he's also trying new things as well. And I just think that if a Ridley Scott film comes out, I'm going to see it, even if it's
Mm.
one of those horrible Alien remakes that reboots that he's doing. The original Alien, he gets all the credit in the world for, and he's been coasting on that in the Alien franchise for a little too long. But there's still movies that he makes that I think are well made. And by the way, he's not the oldest person on my list. the oldest person on my list, still making movies, at least as far as I know. He's still planning on his next film, despite the fact that his last film was practically dumped by Warner Brothers, is Clint Eastwood.
Mm,
Uh,
nice.
I've always liked Clint Eastwood as both an actor and as a director. I think his films have been very good. I think Cry Macho was a little weak, but I liked Juror Number Two quite well. And the two previous films before that he was making in his 80s, Richard Jewell and The Mule, I'm going, those are excellent films. And that he's still working at that level at that age impresses me. So, like I said, I would probably always see a Clint Eastwood film. And then I have, for my last spot, I've got the Coppola, Tarantino, Spielberg, Scorsese group that you have to pick from. And since Jaws is one of my favorite films, I'll probably stick Spielberg in there. Although I think you could take those four guys and make your own mountain out of them easily. So I
Sort of what I
yeah,
did.
so I signed myself an impossible task and then failed to perform it. So, well, thank you.
It's always the fourth choice that's the difficult one.
Yeah,
Even if you do like five, the first four are easy. It's the fifth one that's always the
it's the last one
problem.
you say, who do I leave off? Who do I leave off? And you
Yeah,
hate to do it, you know. It's a tough thing.
yeah.
But it's a fun game to play, and I hope the people listening will all play along and come up with their own lists. By the way, you're always welcome to share if you post your lists on the Lamb site or on the YouTube channel. That'll be perfectly fine. Well, let me give our guests a chance to promote anything that they'd like to. I know Howard's not currently active on Pop Art, but maybe you've done something or been on another podcast that you'd like to mention.
I will be tomorrow night, so I'll probably talk about that the next
Okay,
time
fair.
I'm on, in case the world ends and I don't end up doing it.
And
But of course, the rapture didn't happen, so
and of course,
you
there's a
know.
whole inventory of things that you talk about on Pop Art that has not disappeared. It's just not being expanded at the moment. But you'll get back to it when you get
Yeah,
a
so
chance.
people everywhere, go look up pop art and catch up on past episodes. And I'm very open to be on other people's podcasts. I would love to do that. So spread the word.
And Rashab, do you have something that you would like to share with the world and publicize?
Yes, I do, and I just want to add also, if you go into pop art, you might see an episode with yours truly as well.
With
So
you. See,
that is,
what did we do together? Was that?
it was the zombie one. It was the Halloween or
Yes,
Valentine's Day
I walked
special.
with a zombie
Yes, yes.
and
Warm bodies.
warm bodies. Yeah, that was a really good episode.
Yeah, and
It was a
lots of
great episode.
fun.
And Richard's been on four times, maybe three times, four
At least
times.
four, yeah.
And I feel bad because I made you my Valentine's Day person, and now there may not be a Valentine's Day. Lisa Leahy is my Halloween person, but no. And then Jay Clute is my Christmas person, but I guess not this year. Hopefully, we'll figure out what's going on with me and I'll get my energy back.
We'll keep our fingers crossed that it all works out. I'm sure you know that people are looking forward to the next episodes when they do come, though, so don't worry about that.
Yep, yep.
And Rashad, by the way, I do want to say I appreciated the video link that you provided for Dangerous Animals. I Dangerous Animals has been my favorite film of the year so far.
Yep.
So
I know there's some diehard fans of that movie out there, and I enjoyed it myself. So
so it's
that's
all a good deal. Yeah,
absolutely.
excellent. And then on my side, as usual, I'm just trying to catch up. Uh, I've told people honestly last week on the show that I'm not as quick in putting up my comments as I used to be. It used to be a habit of mine to immediately file my comments right after I saw a film, even if it meant staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't do that anymore, and now I fall behind a week or two, and I feel bad, guilty about it. It still hasn't motivated me enough. The last two films that I posted on, though, I was motivated enough to talk about because I disliked them so much. So, in addition to the film that we talked about today, you can see my takedown of Him, which is also a pretty terrible movie. And then I'll catch up eventually with some of the other films that I saw recently that I'm a little behind on. Well, I want to thank you guys for showing up today. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you enjoyed the movie. I'm sorry that I can't join you in your happiness about the film, but I'm glad that everybody was respectful in our conversation here, even if you're wrong.
And that you is very general
Yes,
because that could
because
refer
it
to
very
you.
well could include me. So until next time, folks, take it easy. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.
It's over!